in Vancouver in March. So the president of Google, I've forgotten his name, actually presented this. And to me, it was so outstanding. So at 6 o'clock this morning, I woke up and I thought, I have to share this with you all. So we're in a time that's really changing. And Joi Ito, the young man I was telling you, who's the director of the MIT Design Lab, which is the most innovative lab in the world. And by the way, he's a dropout college student. And he had started the first internet provider in Japan. And because of that knowledge, and he invested in Facebook and Flickr and a whole lot of stuff. So again, the world is changing a lot. And I wanted to start off with that. And I wanted to share with, let me go back, you saw his quote up there, and I thought that was great. The fact is, we've got to be ready to react to anything, because we don't know what's going to happen. That's the times that we're in. So for me, one of the biggest mindset shifts was in 1995 when I worked for Xerox, and I'd been there since I was in my early 20s, thinking I'd be there forever, and suddenly started laying people off. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm in my early 40s. I'm going to have to work for a long time. If they let me go, I've never really loved what I've done before. I loved working for Xerox. And so I went looking for a career change, and I discovered this work, facilitation, organizational change. And I went to a conference in Texas, and this was something that was a mindset shift for me. I grew up in the world where if you went into a meeting and you asked a question, people would, can you hear me? I forgot to pick up the mic. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So people would say at Xerox, if you're asking a question, it makes people think that you don't know the answer. So you would never ask a question in a meeting. Anybody ever part of that generation? You know, knowledge is power, you hold on to it. And so I was at this conference, and somebody said from EDS, a computing company, we must help our staff move from knowers to learners. And therefore we have to have some principles, and the first one is humility. No matter how much I know, I must be open to what other things are out there. And therefore what I'm going to do is I'm going to use curiosity, so inquiry. And today in the schools, you have collaborative inquiry, you have student inquiry. So inquiry's become a big thing now. 20 years ago, it was novel. And then you use it on a foundation of trust. And I love the definition of trust that they gave, because the definition was that the belief that whatever that other person who has a different worldview of mine, that's their worldview, that's their truth. I trust that they are telling me their truth. Therefore, I will use empathy to make sense and coherence of that truth, and I'm going to do it on a foundation of self-esteem. So for me, that was a moment where in that talk, I left seeing the world differently. And that's what we mean by mindset changes. Another was for me in '98 when I left Xerox and we had done change management through problem solving. I said there has to be a different way to do this, to engage the human side in change, rather than diverting the platform to problems. And so I went to the Creative Problem Solving Institute. Now this is when your stories get old, sometimes you have to explain the context. Apartheid ended in 1994, this was 1998. And Cobus Neethling, one of the speakers, had helped Mandela and de Klerk change South Africa and set it up. And so he talked about the 20th century was about problem solving, but the 21st was about creating possibilities. And he told a story about a young woman who was very newsworthy then, because she had grown up in the townships, she had got a degree, she was a chartered accountant, and at 26 she was starting her own firm. And he talked about how he heard her speak in the radio, and the interviewer asked her, traditional kind of deficit question, so what was it like every day to wake up with the problems you faced, even before you got out of bed in the morning? And she said, stop there, people were born in problems, die in problems. I woke up every day to the possibilities my life had to give to me. And that for me was another way to look at it, to say I can hold that tension of this is a pretty bad situation that I'm in, but how can I take and figure out the best? And for those of you who work in the work that you're doing, that's what you're doing every day with the students. So that was for me another mindset shift. And that's when I discovered appreciative inquiry and got me on this pathway of saying problem solving is great for when my car breaks down. Appreciative inquiry and strength-based approaches are great when it's the human side of change to engage people. A third mindset change that happened to me happened 2 years ago when I watched the movie Chasing Ice. Has anyone seen that particular movie? Okay, and so it talks about dramatic changes that's happening on our planet. And I came out of that and I started to think to myself, as we believe now that fossil fuels are causing problems in our climate, Could it be that things that we're doing in our organizations are also causing us all sorts of problems with how we're fueling them? Many organizations are being fueled by fear. People are overwhelmed. And so that's when I thought to myself, the future is uncertain. People recognize some of those expressions up on the blackboard there. I decided that what I was going to do was I was going to look at a different way to see change, and that I was going to focus on how we can actually tap into positive, renewable human energy. So when I talk about climate change in organizations, what I'm talking about is climate different from culture, because the culture is your vision, values, and beliefs. So you want that to be the same, but what can you do to change some of the attitudes and behaviors that you're experiencing in your organizations, in your classrooms, in your staff rooms, and so on. So, appreciative inquiry, my mentor, Jay Magruder Watkins, calls it change at the speed of imagination. So just because it helps you change a mindset. And what I loved about this was this quote, we're moving from a world of problems which demands speed, analysis, and elimination of uncertainty to solve, and to a world of dilemmas which demand patience, sense-making, and engagement of uncertainty. So the world is changing. So I want to start off by saying appreciative inquiry is about both and. It's about evidence-based and it's about dialogue. And a client of mine, which was a youth mental health agency, what they did was they brought in the empirical research and evidence-based